Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Media in Flux, Shaping the Future of Journalism in the Western Balkans and Turkey. First of all, I would just like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded and later on it will be published on our website. So, last year, the first phase of the Regional Future of Media in the Western Balkans and Turkey study was published and presented. So it was conducted by our media initiative, which is co-funded by the European Union. It brought quantitative findings about key trends across the media landscapes in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, and Turkey. So this second cycle of the study builds on that foundation from last year, but it is shifting the focus to the perspectives of key actors in the media landscape. Meaning that through focus groups with citizens, media professionals, influential voices across the region, this phase captured how media and democracy are experienced, perceived, and questioned today. So my name is Lamia Lečković, and I will be your moderator for today's session. It will offer insights into how these groups of people that I just mentioned see ongoing changes, challenges, and opportunities. And it will also open space for a discussion later on, where you're all welcome to join. And the topic will be the future of media, what it might look like in the region. So we will get many insights. But first of all, I would like to introduce Maida Muminović, Director of Mediacentar Sarajevo, and Tihomir Loza, Director of Southeast European Network for Professionalization of Media. So welcome, and please talk to us.
Thank you, Lamia, so much. Dear guests and colleagues, thank you so much for being today with us. Today's event is organized under umbrella of our media project, implemented by SEENPM network and the member organizations Albanian Media Institute, Bianet from Turkey, Kosovo Press Council, Montenegro Media Institute, Macedonian Institute for Media, Novi School of Journalism, Peace Institute, and the organization I myself am representing, Foundation Media Center, in the capacity of Regional Project Coordinator. This event is also our final regional advocacy event under this project, but of course this is not the end of our network's joint work on promotion of professional standard in journalism and advocacy for freedom of expression and freedom of media. Our network, SEENPM, has been the connecting tissue among all our organizations across the CEE who are working on media research, media education, media literacy, education, and advocacy. Possibly the most visible work, something most known to you all, is our work in the field of media research. As a network, we have had a great privilege to have our joint research work be led by Brankica Petković and also contributed by a number of amazing media researchers from across the region, some of whom you will be able to hear and meet today. Under Ms. Petković's guidance, our network has established a very unique regional approach to researching themes and developments of highest relevance for media actors across Southeast Europe, from problems that are harming integrity of media, about harmful practices of media ownership and media financing, to models of hate speech, models of propaganda and disinformation affecting our joint media environment. I'm really proud to say that SEENPM research work has offered a regional framework for debates, consultations, and coalitions among key stakeholders. It has informed policy changes. It has informed programs led by civil society organizations. It has served as a platform that brought together journalists, editors, activists, media owners, policy and decision makers at the same table over well-researched informations and well-informed recommendations. And this is no small achievement to be made in a region as complex as ours. In the last 3 years, our network has explored practices of media activism, state of self-regulation, and we have also embarked on what could possibly be the most ambitious research yet, the research that brings us the answer to the questions, what brings the future of media? So today we are presenting our latest work on this subject. And this is the end of one joint journey for our network, but also this event marks the beginning of continued cooperation among our organizations. I invite you wholeheartedly to read our research, but not only to read it, but also to use it, to question it, to challenge it, to build upon it, because the value of our work lies in the ways you are engaged with it. We firmly believe as a network that only by understanding the realities we face, recognizing both opportunities and challenges, can we meaningfully as organizations contribute to strengthening freedom of expression and freedom of media in our region. And this is precisely what our network will continue to do. So this is all I wanted to say at the beginning. Tiho will now maybe like to share a few words.
Thank you very much, Maida. Thanks a lot, Lamia. Just a few words about our network. So SEENPM is a group of media NGOs in, I think, 12 countries now of Central and Southeast Europe. So it's countries such as Hungary and Slovenia in the northwest, all the way down to Turkey. To this project, our primary focus was really on strengthening capacities of people like us, of media CSOs, of media professionals, as well as young activists on this project. And we, of course, through a number of activities, worked directly with citizens. So the goal was really to improve understanding of trends and challenges that we see that the media freedom and media integrity face in the region. I think what we tried to do was to pinpoint the main trends, the main facts, the main new realities about the state of journalism. And then the idea was to, on that basis, encourage discussion on sort of meaningful responses of civil society, the industry, citizens, young leaders, etc. And you also tried to sort of try out some of those responses in the real world. So along with research, of which Maida told you enough, I think I should mention that some of the project themes have been addressed through targeted advocacy based on the findings of this research. So, for example, we had these media and information literacy quizzes, online quizzes, targeting different segments of audiences. And we also had quite extensive engagement of the partners with national media and information literacy coalitions. I should also mention that the project tried to address the issue of gender inequalities in the media. We, of course, highlighted it in the research first, and then tried to address it in different ways through targeted advocacy, through media activism, etc. And here, on some of those issues, we worked with young leaders in those societies. And finally, I should mention that the project also tried to reach out to local communities through a sub-granting scheme to advance media literacy, promote media freedom and integrity, and also to try to counter some of the polarization that we've seen stemming from propaganda, from hate speech, from disinformation, etc. I think that's all from me at this point. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. And I head back to Lamia to moderate discussion.
Further on, yes. Thank you, Maida and Tihomir. I would completely agree and emphasize once again what you've said, and that is that you have given us a very, very good base, which will be a base for further discussions, and also not only knowing the trends, but trying to implement them and see what works, what doesn't work here in our region. But to get the first insights and to get like the broader picture of what the results are of this study, I would like to invite Vesna Nikodinoska, regional research editor from the Macedonian Media Institute, and she will present the findings of the study with us.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vesna Nikodinoska. Today, I will present the regional overview of the second cycle of the research with the title Media and Democracies at Risk, Aware but Largely Disengaged Citizens. Give me some second just to share the presentation with you. This study comprises the considerations of the citizens and the media professionals regarding the current situation and trends in media and democracy in the countries of the Western Balkans and Turkey. Before I start with the presentation, I would like to give a credit to everybody who was involved in preparation of the regional overview and the national researches. Authors of this regional overview are Sanela Hodžić and Sandra Hrvatin, while I will present in a capacity of a regional research editor. The head of this series of research about future of media was Brankica Petković from the Peace Institute. The research was conducted in the 7 countries of the Western Balkans and Turkey by our team of national researchers, Ilda Londo, Lamia Kovačević, Jeton Mehmeti, Milica Bogdanović, Milica Janjatović-Jovanović, and Sinem Aydanli. The purpose of the second cycle of the research Future of Media was to explore how different societal groups perceive the role of the media and journalism in democracy, how they interpret previously identified developments, and how they envision the future of the media and democracy in the countries of the region. We approach citizens' views from the premise that their insights can not only inform media practices and policies, but also be a key determinant of our future media and democracy, potentially inspiring reforms and actions grounded in the common good and solidarity. The insights gathered through this process underpin policy recommendations aimed at safeguarding democratic functions of journalism and media across the region. The primary method of data collection was conducting focus group discussions in each of the 7 participating countries, intended to gather a broad range of perspectives. 2 groups of citizens were divided by age into younger participants and older participants. The third group brought together media professionals, including journalists, editors, and managers from different types of media outlets. And 4th group comprised of citizens with high cultural and social capital and influence, such as writers, artists, academics, whose views contribute to shaping public opinion and public discourse. In total, around 240 participants were included in the focus groups across 7 countries in the region. The first analytical theme is related to what media and journalism mean to citizens, how they understand their functions and role in the society, and whether media fulfill their democratic roles to inform the public, enable debate, and hold power to account. The citizens' opinions point to a clear gap between the normative concept of media and democracy and the realities of the media sector and democracy. The normative role of the media to provide information of public relevance, to represent societal interests, uphold integrity and independence, and shape public opinion, is contrasted with the reality of political and commercial interference, of media outlets that provide unreliable and conflicting information, low quality content, increasing difficulties in reaching audiences and securing funding. Citizens relate the major functions of journalism and the media with providing relevant information, serving the public interest, covering a broad range of thematic areas, and representing diverse social groups and perspectives. Still, in practice, journalism in the region primarily serves particular financial and political interests and fails to serve the public interest. Many participants argued that media are frequently instrumentalized as a means of control and polarization, while some raised concerns about the low levels of media freedoms. Democracy, as citizens see it ideally, lies in practice. On the following slide, you can see how citizens define democracy, perceiving it as a free choice of the people, freedom to exercise voting rights, civic rights, freedom of speech. Or they connect the notion of democracy with space for presenting alternative opinions, debate and criticism, active citizens' participation, rule of law, and trust in political processes. On the other side of this slide, the citizens' perceptions on how democracy works in practice are presented. People's wishes are not heard. Participation is limited to voting. There is a lack of political rights and fragile civic freedoms in some countries. Citizens think that democracy exists only on paper. It is eroded by corruption and polarization. There is a lack of transparency of institutions. Citizens in some countries point to collapse of media standards, political misuse of media, undemocratic actions of the regime, or limited media freedoms. Similar as democracy, citizens have better vision of media compared to their performance and role in the reality. So accept their basic function to represent a source of information. They understand media as a pillar of democracy or prerequisite for democracy, to serve the public interest and have power to shape the public opinion. On the other side, in the practice, media are not perceived as free, but more under political business pressures that erode their independence. The participants notice self-censorship, concentration of ownership, lack of transparency, but also think that media are economically dependent and structurally fragile, or that they are a source of sensationalism, disinformation, and propaganda. The citizens across the region share similar understanding about the ideal role of journalism. They perceive it as a public service. The journalism serves to convey true and relevant information and have power to impact the public opinion. They consider that the journalism should be professional and accountable, fact-based, to abide to ethics and standards. They see it in its ideal watchdog role by protecting public interests. Some citizens consider that journalism has power to bring about the social changes, which is a rare case in the countries of the region. Still, this ideal image of journalism is distorted in the practice. The citizens think that journalism is not free and it's not independent, that it lacks accountability and self-regulation, and that even fails to provide information on public interest. The consequences are seen in lack of audience trust, it is disrespected, and it is not desirable profession for the young people. While the number of media outlets in the region remain high, and in some countries has even increased in the past years, the respondents believe that this does not mean greater journalistic quality or pluralism. On the contrary, the majority of media outlets are perceived primarily as businesses or instruments of political propaganda. The examples of media in Montenegro, for example, an expansion of Serbian influence, but also examples in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the number of media outlets with functional newsroom and clear professional mission is declining. Despite the relevance of the local and regional media for the communities on local level, the participants across the region notice decline of the local and regional media. This is trend in Kosovo, Turkey, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, while in some countries they are vulnerable to political influences, in others they struggle with financial situation. The respondents, primarily the media professionals and the citizens with high cultural and social capital and influence, identified a range of factors that contribute to the discrepancy between the media and journalists as they ought to function and as they operate in practice. The first set of factors are connected to authoritarian and anti-democratic government practices. This means weak media policies, insufficient support and funding, instrumentalization of media for particular political or economic interests through ownership structures, through funding mechanisms, and influence over governing structures. As an example, they pointed to the attempt by the government of Republika Srpska to introduce a foreign agents law that has been declared unconstitutional for violating Article 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Or another example is North Macedonia, where the legal provisions for political and state advertising allow allocation of the state budget funds for media, that this can potentially undermine media independence and foster media clientelism. In Serbia, the government has in recent decades acquired control over a significant portion of media outlets, including through ownership and funding. The second set of reasons are of economic nature. Citizens point to limited and decreasing revenue sources, funding models that constrain editorial independence in a situation when major portions of advertising revenues flow to political propaganda platforms or commercial outlets with questionable integrity. A significant problem arises from the growing competition from online platforms. Excuse me. And the reduction of international media assistance, which is a case noticed in all countries of the Western Balkan region. The third set of factors refer to the practices of media outlets and journalists themselves. Participants in the focus groups consider that journalistic quality is low, while the violations of professional standards are seen as a regular practice. The participants point to sensationalism, presence of disinformation, insufficient representation of diverse social groups and perspectives, political bias, absence of dialogue, limited creativity and innovation, weak analytical content, or sometimes content that incites anxiety. Participants in more countries also pointed to the failure of the public service broadcasters to exercise their public service remit due to political interference. Further, media professionals pointed to the devaluation of journalism, the low socioeconomic position of journalists, and frequent pressures, harassment, intimidation, smear campaigns they face by politicians. The offensive language used against them has been normalized in the political culture and political communication. Examples are found in the reports of Albania, Serbia, and Kosovo. Concerning trends is also the declining number of journalism students in the region, which is a consequence of unfavorable working conditions, sustained pressures, and declining status of role of media and journalism. In some countries, the trust is put only in a small number of media outlets. The citizens consider credible. Citizens are increasingly migrating not only from traditional media to online platforms, but from established media sources to the social media profiles of individual personalities. However, the citizens often express overreaching mistrust of the media and disregard quality media sources. A participant from the group with high cultural and social capital and influence in Serbia warned that overly generalized distrust opens a space for manipulation and leads to a situation where people no longer believe anything or anybody. Just a moment. Media habits have undergone major shifts in the recent years as a result primarily of the rise of social media platforms and the related changes in both citizens' demands and the media environment. Social networks and online media are primarily sources of information, particularly among young citizens, but also increasingly among the older public. The older generation still usually turn to television for information, particularly during prime time. Some participants pointed out that social media enables access to more diverse information and to underrepresented information and perspectives, such as the case in Serbia. The participants also indicate a major change in the intention behind communication practices, where news and information are no longer actively sought but are constantly received through omnipresent mobile devices and social network feeds. Consequently, algorithms determine which information reaches citizens most prominently. This has significant implications not only for political communication and electoral outcomes, but also for commerce and overall value system. Several participants across the region mentioned information overload and pointed to a lack of interest in seeking news. Citizens report on news avoidance, low engagement, and information fatigue. However, citizens are highly skeptical of the information they receive through social networks. But on the other side, professional media outlets are also not trusted enough. The general opinion that the media are presenting half-truths, that they are selective, dependent on political alignment, and utterly commercialized. For example, during the biggest anti-government citizen protests in Serbia, citizens recognized that many media outlets aligned with the government did not report on practices of detaining activists or campaigns against protesters. Across the countries of the region, engagement with the media remains low, with direct communication, requests, and complaints remaining only an exception. The culture of subscription to media content is ultimately underdeveloped. Citizens expect to access news free of charge and often see little reason to fund media content. Only some participants, for example, among the younger citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina or in Macedonia, are willing to financially support media production and high-quality content and media. Engagement usually means leaving comments under media content or filing a complaint, while many are not using or are not familiar with the complaint mechanisms. Citizens do not use media effectively for civic participation, indicating difficulties in finding information, insufficient information, and difficulties in assessing its reliability, lack of motivation, and lack of trust in the possibility of societal change. There are no initiatives for citizen engagement aimed at improving the media landscape. This was mentioned only as a distant possibility by a small number of research participants. Participants expressed a large range of needs and demands, all of which reflect to a strong desire for a different and better media and for diverse and content quality. Across the region, the citizens have very similar demands for more content related to education, health, culture, art, agriculture, research, technology, programs for children and young people, thematic content for particular groups, women, vulnerable, marginalized groups, minorities, and ethnic communities. Many stress need for more positive content as a change for overburdening bleak content. They need analysis, debates, in-depth coverage, documentaries, creative and innovative and engaging content, especially for the young people. What citizens need less is politics, crime, entertainment, and sensationalism. They need less disinformation and unprofessional reporting, polarizing content, and reality formats which are promoting unacceptable behavior. And they also need less content of low quality. Other needs and demands that citizens stressed was media to respond to the needs of all groups, protection and independence of the journalists, activist-oriented journalism, strengthening human and other capacities in the newsroom, government support for quality content, They ask media to be a cohesive factor in the society. They also ask for establishing better communication with the audiences. They also plead for solidarity, for media literacy programs, for programs related to critical thinking, and for democratic engagement. Citizens' views about the future of our democracies and our media vary, from skepticism to cautious optimism. Citizens believe in a need for public service, reliable and responsible journalism. The main point of participants across different countries was the necessity to address the political capture and monopolization. Otherwise, the journalism will continue to struggle for survival. You can see more details in the report on Turkey. In order to address this need, participants across the region believe that only systemic changes in our societies can reverse negative trends. In this context, citizens and media professionals spoke of the need to revive quality, independent, public mission journalism as a prerequisite for democracy. Despite the growing use of the artificial intelligence, citizens consider human judgment, empathy, and integrity as core principles of journalism in present and in the future. In this light, artificial intelligence and digital tools are seen to be used as a support for journalists in their investigative and analytical efforts. Citizens are aware of the technological changes that will continue in the future and suggest that media and journalists need to adjust to these new trends and formats in order to meet citizens' requirements. In several countries, the participants talked about the need to change media funding models, for example, in order to ensure editorial independence and financial sustainability of media outlets. Some participants consider that public funds should be used to finance media operations and media projects on a merit basis. For example, all focus groups in North Macedonia mentioned the Media Pluralism Fund, an independent mechanism for funding media outlets and media products of public interest. In other countries, there were suggestions for diversifying revenue sources, including commercial services, subscriptions, and membership models. Advancing citizens' engagement and strengthening support for media was stressed as important for recognizing citizens as media allies. As a conclusion, citizens perceive the democracy in their countries as dysfunctional and consider that media do not perform their primary role. There are systemic multiple challenges that media outlets and journalists face related to regulation, financial and political pressures, intensifying competition, low socio-economic conditions. To reverse these negative trends, to ensure the sustainability of the quality journalism and safeguard the future of our democracies, the participants in the focus group suggest that reforms are required on multiple levels. First, reform of media policies and implementation mechanisms. This means that media experts, professionals, citizens need to mobilize to demand policies that enable quality journalism. The effective media policies, including financial support mechanisms, should enable the existence of quality investigative, community, local, and regional media outlets, but also financial and editorial independence of the public service broadcasters. Ensuring sustainability of quality journalism through public funds for supporting quality journalism and through the international donor community support can ensure financial safeguards of the high-quality media and journalism. Also, advertisers and advertising agencies should strengthen advertising practices by increasing transparency and ethics in their work. Governments, the media community, the civil society actors should work to ensure more equitable competition between local media and global technology companies. Promoting media transparency refers to the notion that by disclosure of ownership structures, the funding sources, and the use of generative artificial intelligence in content production can help media demonstrate credibility, transparency, and rebuild public trust. Promoting citizen engagement and community building refers to efforts for building and maintaining mechanisms for direct communication with citizens, including different formats and platforms for engagement. This is a way for rebuilding trust in media. Inclusion, representation, and thematic diversity. Media should promote inclusivity and ensure balanced representation of different political perspectives and social groups in their content, especially representation of marginalized communities. Responding to technological changes and to shifts in citizen behavior and preferences. Media outlets should adapt their work and content to digital environment and shorter attention spans to the public, while maintaining relevance and quality in their work and the media products. Improving socio-economic conditions refers to better working conditions and institutional and legal protection of the journalists. Strengthening of self-regulation mechanism refers to the self-regulatory bodies that should be strengthened, supported, and accepted among media community. The ethical norms and mechanisms need to be adapted to the digital environment. Media literacy is a pivotal for enabling citizens' understanding of and engagement in the socio-political processes. This is why it is important to include it in all levels of education, but also continue the training of media professionals. At the end, citizens conclude that meaningful media reform depends on broader socio-political transformation that can be achieved through holistic approach and inclusion of all segments of the society. I want to close this presentation with the question posed at the end of our research: what does the future of media look like? I believe that your opinions and views in the next section for the discussion will enrich the findings of our research. I would like to thank you for your attention and invite you to look at the Future of Media section at the SEENPM website, where you can find the national researches and the regional overview. I will try to open the site. Just give me a second just to present you the product of our 1 year, 2 year work that we did with the researchers. Here you can find the regional study overview, and in the country reports you can find the national reports of all countries that participated in the research. And further, you can also see the regional overview. This information here on this site, actually you can find information on both sides, on both cycles of the research Future of Media that was conducted in the past 2 years. Thank you for your attention again.
Thank you very much, Vesna. This was impressive. I have to emphasize 2 things that I remembered and that I'm really, really glad to hear: how the citizens and majority of people of the audience when we put it in the different way in terminology, the need for democratic revival and ensuring sustainability of quality journalism. So taking in consideration that there were, correct me if I'm wrong, 121 citizens participating in this research. Everything that they said, like what you mentioned, the gap between reality and the expectations. This is a clear school book example of what media and journalism should be today, and those are their expectations. So it's really nice to hear that the audiences and the people really, really think about journalism and know what they want from us. Another thing I've seen is that mostly women, when we're talking about gender and gender equality and representation of women, mostly women worked on this research, and I'm really, really glad to see that. So maybe it would be nice from me and from us to give some time and the platform for our next 3 speakers, and they are men. So let me say hi to three great media experts: Jeton Mehmeti, media researcher from Kosovo; Lukas Bet, media researcher from UK; Ivan Kuzmanovski, editor from TV Sitel in North Macedonia. So you're all, once again, I have to mention, you're all really welcome to ask questions, either by raising your hand or writing questions in the chat. And as well, please do emphasize to whom the question is addressed so that I can moderate better. Okay, so let's start with you, Jeton. And when we heard about the main research findings, of course, and the whole regional overview, but since you worked on Kosovo specifically, did you notice anything that stands out compared to the other findings from other countries?
Thank you, Lamia, for this opportunity to present some of the findings. Yes, it appears that three of us are men as in the panel, but in the last 2 years, we've worked under the guidance of some of the most respected women researchers, starting from Brankica, Vesna, Lamia, Maida, and all the project, and you as well. So all the project team was really run by some professionals. So it has been a pleasure to work on this project for the last 2 years. And I advise anybody who wants to look at this research, perhaps they should read both the first phase and the second phase, because they complement each other. So while the first research is built on quantitative data, the second research is built on the interpretation of those data by those that really care the most about journalism, meaning the journalists themselves, the citizens themselves. So they are very much interconnected. So speaking of Kosovo, well, I would like to emphasize that Kosovo is no outlier in this, in the sense of being too progressive or too behind compared to the other countries. So it shares the similar problems shared by the others. However, there are some things that perhaps stand out in the sense of Kosovo still have no direct censorship in a way. So the media freedom is there. Kosovo still has the formal media freedom. There is a plurality of voices so that citizens can get different perspectives from different private media and NGO media that operate in Kosovo. The community of journalists seems to be very much organized, especially under the guidance of the Association of Kosovo Journalists. Their membership number is increasing. They are more proactive. There are more training for journalists in Kosovo. So the community of journalists is very much organized and seems to be doing quite well. Another note, the self-regulatory body seems to be working very well in the sense of the Press Council of Kosovo seems to increase the membership, and there are more regular board meetings, and there is more transparency in the decision making. So people more and more are trusting the Press Council to complain for different things that they see on the media. And the last point, in the sense of positive aspects, is that the judiciary seems to be improving, or there is more awareness with regard to respect of the work of journalists and the media, in the sense that we see more and more European values integrated. There is more training with regard to the judiciary and the prosecutors. Decisions come to come faster when it comes to the threat against journalists. So overall, and the slap attempts are being dismissed much earlier compared to some years ago. So there is more awareness and preparation on the judiciary in terms of protecting free speech and protecting the media. However, there are three things that I would like to highlight which stand out on a negative side. And the first one is the economy. The political pressure seems to be increasing. So we have more an increase of political polarization, which means more verbal attacks are coming from public officials towards journalists and the media. And this has created a general rhetoric which is negative towards the media. And the media and the journalists are more and more seen as opponents rather than democratic actors in a democratic society. So this political climate is creating more a mistrust towards journalists, and it's contributing towards the declining credibility of journalists. The second negative trend has to do with the economic indicator. our research has shown that the economic situation in Kosovo has moved from problematic to a very serious situation, in the sense that there is a decline of donor funding, the withdrawal of the US aid in Kosovo, and as well as in other countries, has created a gap in terms of funding, which was substantial for some of the independent media. And there is a shift of private sector ads to social media rather than to the traditional media outlets. And the last challenge, which is also included in the title of the Kosovo report, there is a challenge coming from the digital media, in the sense of that there is a fast rise of influencers and unregulated media portals online. And this is creating a blur line between journalism and content creators. So when we spoke with the citizens, most of them have a difficulty to understand who are the media these days, because there are a lot of influencers using media channels for their own benefits, as well as for their own activities. So overall, I would like to say that Kosovo is within the region when it comes to the challenges. However, there are some positive trends, just as there are some negative trends, and we can perhaps discuss further later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is really interesting that you said there is something, the saying that we should be journalism creators and everyone else is content creators. So today we're talking a lot about newsfluencing and so on, but I think that we still here in the region didn't, we didn't accept it, and still maybe don't work a lot on it, but there's the perspective. One more thing, yet on when we're talking about social media and accepting the content from social media, young people are the first ones who are being informed through social media. We've seen that through this report as well. So what would you say about this paradox that fewer young people want to be journalists and study journalism, but at the same time, there is more and more media outlets and a bigger demand for journalists?
I suppose that question was for me, Lamia, right?
Oh,
All right.
didn't I say that? Yes.
Yeah, you did say, yeah.
Sorry.
You did say. Well, it's a paradox, if I can put it that way, that we have seen, at least in the case of Kosovo, there are fewer journalism students these days compared to a few years ago. And on the other hand, there are more and more media outlets. So the number of online media is increasing. The number of online platforms is increasing. The number of people who are active in the social media is increasing as well. So there are more and more voices. I don't know if I should rest right now or just leave it a bit later. What people or why we have the reasons why we have this kind of trend, but just to emphasize that.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So it is we have looked at some of the data, for example, with regard to the number of students that study journalism, and in the last 4 years we have seen a sharp decline. Just to give you some perspective, 4 years ago there were 135 students enrolled at the Department of Journalism at the University of Pristina. The last year the number dropped to 63. So that's more than 50% decline of young people to study journalism. And then when we talk to young people during the focus group discussion, as well as to the media, some of the reasons that came out is because journalism is considered as a profession, as a low-paying job. So there is no financial incentive for young people to pursue this kind of profession. They also see some high risks when it comes to this profession, especially with the smear campaigns that we have seen in recent years, not necessarily physical threats, which are also evident, but in a very much smaller scale compared to online smear campaigns and threats towards journalists. So at the same time, we've seen the rise of, like I said, influentials who do not go through proper training as with regard to what the young journalists go through their studies. So in a way, they are seeing a faster track to enter the media business without undergoing through a formal education. So these are the changing trends that we see in Kosovo.
Yes, it is mostly in the whole region the same case that the salaries of journalists are below national average. The same thing is pretty familiar to you, Ivan, right? So I would like to hear a bit more about your experience because you are in a TV station. Are young people still interested in journalism? Do you employ journalists? How interested they are into staying? That's also one of the challenges, how to keep young people in the newsroom. So what is it like from your experience?
Hi everyone, this is Ivan Kuzmanovski speaking, journalist and editor in TV Citadel in Skopje. TV Citadel is the biggest and most watched private TV station in Macedonia. I want to say that it's always a pleasure to speak about journalism and thank you for inviting me on this panel. A very good question. Are young people still interested? Would say not as much as 20 years ago, for sure, when I have started the career as a journalist. I remember that I have become part of the team after I have succeeded to go over several tests that the television was doing at my university in Skopje, and then they invited few of us for a trial period in the TV station. So which one will be the best? He will stay in the TV process and will become an employee. And here I am still on after 20 years. I have said this because it is, as we have heard in Kosovo, it's similar in Skopje. It's unimaginable even to make a group for testing at the state university today in Skopje, since we have around 10, some years, 6 to 8 people studying journalism at the state university. When I started with my studies, we were more than 100 people 20 years ago. Today we have 6 to 8 people at the state university learning to become journalists. Yesterday, I asked one of the youngest journalists in our newsroom about her opinion, why young people don't want to be part of this profession. And the first response was because of the money. Young people don't want to work free. They want to be paid for their work. You said that average monthly income in the region is under under the average of the country. I think that in Macedonia, journalists have monthly income around 500 or 600 euros. This girl and a lot other young journalists, just to stay and to cover their expenses in Skopje, need to take second job. They usually work in online media just to have something more so they can cover all the expenses. She said that she's in the TV station just to learn about the professional standards and how to do good journalism. And her second answer after the money was because of the corruption and the confidence in the medias. We had really bad period for journalism in Macedonia. I don't know how others are familiar with this situation before 10 years ago with one of our previous governments. Personally, I think that those were the worst years for journalism in Macedonia in aspect of pressure, in aspect of direct threats for journalists and everything that lead to self-censorships and undermining what the journalists are doing and working. So when you lose the confidence in public and when you lose the confidence around people, it's very hard to bring it up again. If we put it in a row, I would say three important things for the young people: low income, corruption and political influence, and confidence. As a third, so this would be pretty much the situation in our country. And as I understand from colleagues, it is similar all around the region. And as I understand from the presentation from Vesna, people also said media equal to not free. So it is the opinion is same with the professionals and with the public and with the audience.
Same perception, right. Lucas, researchers in the UK started looking into new ways how to fund local media, because we can talk about local media in the countries, but also our whole region in a global sense is localized in a way. So you spoke to some major journalism funders across the globe to understand what actually works on the ground and how this support could be, for example, implemented. Can you walk us through your approach? What was the goal of the research?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the UK, where I'm based, we have very similar challenges with the decline of journalism, based on the decline of the traditional business model. We're all facing very similar challenges. I was commissioned by the Public Interest News Foundation, which is a charity to support local news in the UK, with two aims, basically, because they want to build a journalism fund. They wanted to understand first, how should we design that fund? What should it look like? What can we learn from others abroad? And also to galvanize support for one. So it's both an internally useful document and also an external document to help build support from funders. And there are basically four guiding questions. What do other countries do? So looking abroad and actually seeing that there's these new journalism funds in the last 5 or so years, which have a new approach, which aren't doing sort of subsidies, but are generally being strategic in how they're supporting and addressing the deep issues which are facing the media industry. Why do they do it? So what's their kind of hypotheses, their theories of change, etc. How do they do it? What kind of support do they provide? And what's working in practice? So this translated into research questions around their legal structures, their governance structures, what kind of support they provide. And I got in touch with over 10 of I would say, the most interesting journalism funds in the world. And I spoke to the leaders of these funds and interviewed them to really dive into what they were doing. And I followed this up with a lot of more in-depth research around the documents that were publicly available. And from this produced 10 case studies on each of these journalism funds, ranging from the $400 million flagship fund of Press Forward in the US to American Journalism Project, which has raised over $250 million, to pan-regional, pan-European funds like Civitatis, you might know, and smaller emerging ones like Fonds pour une presse libre in France. A huge range of funds, but many of them very new. And I analyzed what they were telling me and basically created quite a clear synthesis of what they were collectively doing, where the models were the same, where they were different, and overall showing what I would call a blueprint for others to follow in creating funds which can support both local news and other forms of journalism through building journalism funds, which are collaborative vehicles with other funders, and having a strategic approach to addressing the kind of root challenges facing the industry.
So what stood out most from all the findings that you had?
Well, first, that I think they were all quite coherently similar, that they weren't doing completely different things, that they actually had really core similar approaches, and some of them were already exchanging, but some of them didn't know at all about each other. But it's very reassuring when you find that organizations and people are doing similar things for similar reasons. Those components are, in terms of its strategic approach, they focus on business models very often. They recognize that that's at the core of the kind of sustainability and independence of media, is to be able to generate its own revenues. And that's at the core of the kind of crisis that we're seeing. So they focus a lot on providing support to rebuild the business models, and the internal operational capacity of newsrooms. They also provide more than funding. They recognize that at the core of this is that flight of capital from the sector, that there's just so little funding in the system. So they're providing that foundational, like, keystone ecosystem building, and ecosystem building is what I heard a lot about. But without money, it's very difficult for people to spend time addressing the challenges. They provide funding, and they provide that in two ways. either catalytic funding, so that's providing really meaningful amounts of funding, significant funding, usually ranging from in dollars, it could be from $200,000 a year to $300,000 a year for about 3 years, and that's enabling newsrooms to make strategic investments in new hires and investing in approaches that with a plan to grow their revenue, basically. I would call that the rocket ship approach. They're sort of giving them the capacity to take off. And there's a second approach, which was used by a minority of the funds that I looked at, but still an important one. I'd call it the gardening approach, where they say it is just essential that we don't lose the newsrooms that we have here, that we support them. They are the front line against the kind of the collapse of democracy and the kind of fraying of the social fabric. So they're addressing both the challenges ultimately in democracies and communities. And their approach is just to sustain and support these news organizations as a kind of an ecosystem of people who are supporting each other, but that their work is vital and it's having an impact, and it should be funded as a public good. How they're doing this is they're not providing just funding, and across all of these funds, they provide capacity building support. They recognize that funding alone is not enough. So that capacity building support often looks like having dedicated coaches or mentors for people. And it was very conscious that it's not forcing people through training programs, but it's very flexible and adaptive to the individual needs of those organizations. But again, making sure that they're never alone in addressing these challenges themselves, that they recognize that many of the people who are running these, often they focus on independent and mission-driven news organizations, and that the people running these have historically been journalists, because that was the only way that they could do the journalism that they wanted to do, was to start something. And then they find out 3 years later, oh my God, I'm running a business. And they're not business people. And the lack of skills in media management is a significant part of the crisis, the lack of funding and the lack of skills. And so they try to address both of them by building the capacity of the people to lead the change, to make sure that funding is effective. Part of that is also building really great peer cohorts of people who are also going through similar challenges, and also nurturing the wider community. So I mentioned the ecosystem approach. They recognize that you're not going to address these challenges by just supporting one organization to achieve, terminal escape velocity and become a successful organization. It's about nurturing a community of innovators so that they can collectively share their experiences, experiment in different places, and build that collective capacity of, how to run a successful media organization in a media environment that's going through a period of, huge transformation. Yeah, so that was quite coherent across them. And then there's also that's sort of the support they provide, but also how they build the fund is also really important. How do we get more funding into the system is another component I looked at. And these pooled funds are they were used by 8 out of 10 of the organizations I looked at of the funds. And they are single vehicles where they are advocating to funders to put in their resources along with a single shared strategy, and sort of then the funders step back a bit, maybe they participate in the strategy, but it creates a distance between the funders and the grantees. It's an internal firewall. And these funds, I think, are really great models because they provide a center of gravity for funding. They're saying, hey, this is important and this is how you can support it. And they are finding a lot of success in bringing new capital to the sector through saying, you can get involved in this fund. You don't have to do anything but contribute your money, and we will make sure it's effective with our strategy. And it's not going to be a forever commitment, because our strategic approach is going to eventually, within maybe a few decades, but solve the deep problem that we're seeing. That's the pitch, and that they're pitching it to funders who aren't just journalism funders, but saying, I like the line, for any kind of charitable aim you have, journalism should be your number 2 aim, because it supports it in so many ways. If you're a health funder, well, people need to know how to access those services that you're providing, or addresses loneliness. If you're, kind of civil society funder, how journalism supports democracy and people's connection with their neighbors. It's so cross-cutting, and they've made a really good job of advocating to funders why it's valuable to them, and that brings more funding into it to address those deep systemic challenges. Yeah, and overall, I found that I basically identified it is a growing new coherent movement. Most of them since 2019 is when they were founded, and collectively have mobilized over 600 million euros in that time. So it's a new wave of approaches and I think they've got replicable models that others can follow.
Thank you, Lucas. I would just shortly go back to you, Ivan, because I've seen that you had the reaction, both of us actually, how people in the newsrooms and editors were editors and the main people, but today they're all expecting us to be business people. So it's really hard. And that is what Lucas said as well. Capacity building that should be invested into the management structure, not only for content creation among journalists and editors. So what is your view on that? And as well, mentorship that actually today disappeared, and Lucas was mentioning it as well. So I've seen your reaction. Would just like to see if you have something to add.
Yes, I just want to say that it's a problem with financials about journalism, especially with people who are doing good journalism practices. We are all speaking about the online medias that are doing problems, running fast to put something in public, not double checking, not relying on sources and everything. But I need to say that in Macedonia, we also have very good online medias. And speaking with colleagues, I know that especially now, especially in this time, it's very hard to find financial and to support the work. As I know, all of them are starting to put a possibility on the web pages so everyone can donate some amount of money for good story, for good journalism practices. Really, I can't speak about the problem with the finding the monies because I'm working in a TV station. There are other people who are which position is to find the money and to work for the salaries in the TV stations. We have problem with as I said, with the monthly income of the journalist in every media type, in online media, in TV station, in newspapers. We're working to do better with the people running the marketing sector so we can have better positions. But as I can hear, it's the same situation all around the region.
And when you were mentioning the donating money, we heard a lot about the subscription model. So I was pretty surprised to hear that the research is showing that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, people are more ready to pay for good content than in the other parts of the region. Yeton, back to you. Out of all the journalism trends that you looked at through your research and in general through this region research, which trend feels like the biggest threat to professionalism today when we're talking about journalism?
Well, there are, like I said, in this research, we tried at least to see the trends, where we are going, because that's why the research is about the future of media or the future of journalism. And one trend that is quite worrisome that is we need to take special attention is the declining trust in media. So losing trust is something that is happening, at least when we look at the research in Kosovo, and we've looked at the data, some of the international sort of research that's done. For example, from the data from RCC, we have seen in 1 year, the media trust has collapsed from 50% of trust to 30% of trust. So from 50 to 30, that's a big decline. And that's about the years that we have looked, 2023 to 2024. So that's something that we need to really take it very seriously. And that was the topic of discussion during the focus group that we have organized. And it appears that there are three main reasons why we are having this trend. One is internal, and that has to do with the ethical violations inside the media, in the sense that there are more media and the data that we have seen, especially from the complaints towards the Press Council of Kosovo. We looked at the data and we've seen like from 90 complaints that they have received from January to September last year, half of them they have found a violation of the code of ethics. So it means that the majority of the complaints had some grounds. There was some violation of the ethical standards. The second reason appears to be an external reason, something that I mentioned before, and this has to do with the political attacks from outside. So these smear campaigns, these public naming and shaming, calling media and journalism with very bad names that we have not, that there should not be, like traitors, like foreign agents, and you name them. This somehow is blurring the line between what is a journalist and who are these journalists or who they are working for. So in the eyes of citizens, this has created a bigger mistrust or at least questioning of what journalists and the media are reporting. And the third reason, like I said, it has to do with this, it's connected to the economical, to the financial incentives. And due to financial burdens, we have seen a click-driven media reporting. So this has created a low quality content. So from this, in this regard, people have seen less qualitative content that they used to see before. So these three reasons at least came out from the focus group that are somehow making the trust in media and journalism in overall have a decline.
Thank you, Jeton. I see that we have a question from Brankica Petkovic in the chat, but I would just like to say that I've seen in the in Vesna's presentation that actually this what you were mentioning, the click-driven journalism today is not something that the citizens expect, because they want more of community journalism and creating community. So today it's not so much about the clicks, but those trends and that kind of awareness should still come to us. Maybe in the West, that better look us. Maybe in the West, the trends are coming faster. So what Brankica is asking, Ivan and Jeton, how strong are unions defending labor rights of journalists? There's a couple of questions. Are journalists joining them? Is the low level of media professional salaries in the media reflecting also a low business success of the media? Or the media make money for the owners? But yes, so it is mostly the question about unions. Are people joining the unions? And as well reflecting how the low business success of the media. So what are your experiences with that? I hope, Brankica, I translated that well. Jeton?
Well, thank you. That is a very relevant question. Thank you, Brankica, for bringing this up. In the case of Kosovo, we have seen that the Association of Kosovo Journalists is an organization that has improved very much its work in the recent years. It's becoming stronger, it's becoming more active and proactive, more trainings, more people are joining, more journalists. Today it has 720 members, which is quite substantial as for an organization. So, and in addition to that, has created more like departments like the Association of Women Journalists within this big association. So it is becoming more active and there are more training. However, I would say that there is a need for more financing mechanisms. So in this regard, if there is any donor listening to us, I would encourage them to support Association of Journalists across the country. However, the labor union is still missing there in the sense of as a typical labor union. We have seen different smaller labor unions, especially on the level of the public broadcaster in Kosovo, who have their own labor union, and they are active in this regarding protecting and defending the rights of the citizens. But we at least to the research we have done, we do not have a central or a national labor of unions to protect the journalists overall. And so that goes for the second question of people or more journalists joining them. So yes, that is a positive trend, and it's good when journalists trust in their own association and they become a voice in defending their rights. And with regard to the business model, unfortunately, all the business models that we have seen in Kosovo, we cannot like say that particular model is becoming like a blueprint or a model that should be replicated to other media, because media are using different models. Most income is coming from the advertising, so there is no subscription fees, unfortunately. The donors used to be a very big source of income in Kosovo, and that pool is unfortunately shrinking. And this has affected a lot of media, especially the local media. And I think Vesa just emphasized that the local media, which are very substantial for the democracy in our countries, are having are being hit the harshest in terms of financial incomes.
Especially because there are many local media that are actually donor dependent, and now with the funding disappearing from some sources can be really challenging for that the smaller media outlets and local media. Ivan, would you like to add something concerning this?
Yes, a lot of different aspects in this question. So I would say that Association of Journalism is doing a good job in Macedonia. They're usually always reacting, but the question is, who is listening the reactions? Are the owners of the media listening the reactions? We have a Association of Journalism with big tradition, 80 years. They work for the rights and the benefits of the journalism in Macedonia, but not very good with the union of journalism in Macedonia. They started few years ago. They started to go and speak with the owners, initiate talks to have better working conditions for the journalists. But I think that the owners are still not very interested in changing the situation in which the journalists are working. Everybody wants the benefit to be for themselves. Are journalists joining? As I know, the biggest part of the journalists are members of the Association of Journalism, but not very big part of the journalists are member of the Union of Journalists in Macedonia. I don't know if this depends on the monthly price that you have to pay to be member of the union. But I still think that the union needs to work more for the rights of the journalists. What in aspect of the is the low income reason for the owners? I'm not sure about the web pages, but I'm sure about the medias, especially TV stations, that they are working and earning good monies, not bad money. So we expect to have something better in future.
Thank you. When we're talking about the funding and the donors, Lucas, when it comes to the donors that you researched, do they fund only specific geographic regions, or can local media from around the world approach them in the same way and apply? And how to do that?
So each of these funds focuses on a specific region, and that can vary from Civitatis, which is pan-European, to there are sort of one state ones in the US which focus specifically on states, or even some of them within Press Forward, they have local chapters that some of them focus on specific cities. So yeah, each journalism fund has a specific geographic focus, so it's not open to anyone. But these are models that could be replicated in different places.
And the models and everything that you spoke about concerning the research you worked on, how applicable those lessons are to the Western Balkans, or even more restrictive, let's say, environments like Turkey?
That's a really, really important question. So The only state-funded one I looked at was the Dutch Journalism Fund. There are state-supported models, but I think I looked at them because of their strategic approach in addressing the roots of the crisis. And I did reflect on the report on that one of the challenges of it is that model where it's mandated by the government. It's more resilient when there is a a healthy democratic culture, and that this organization is an arm's length government body. It's staffed by civil servants, but there's a relationship of trust with government that it is respected to be autonomous. And if it was translated into a kind of context which has more challenges with democracy and independence, you would need to look at how you're strengthening the firewalls in that organization. If you set up a pooled fund, for example, which is philanthropically led, and there's a great example across the DACH region, which is Switzerland, Austria, and Germany, the Media Forward Fund actually combines both state funding and philanthropic funding, as well as lottery and impact investment. So I think it's a really nice model where they're able to combine different sources of funding. And they were able to meet the bar for editorial independence and separation from state funding in Germany to grantees because of the governance processes they have, where they have an independent jury which makes the grant making decisions, which is totally separate to how the fund is funded and governed. So I think when you're looking at a context where you're a bit more worried about perhaps political influence, or perceived or actual, and trust from communities and the public in the fund and the journalism organizations, it's critical that you get that model right, and I think you can strengthen those firewalls within it. And there was a range in how strong those firewalls were within each of these funds. In some cases, funders might be involved in a working group that might look at the first list of applicants, for example. In some, they're absolutely firewalled off and cannot be involved at all. But I think the model is highly applicable. I think a challenge would be finding the funders. As you mentioned, there's a kind of a flight of capital in the UK and in the US, for example. There is a decent philanthropic scene. There are funders out there, and it's been the mission has been to help them understand the value of journalism to democracy and communities. So that has been the first point in terms of redirecting philanthropic capital that is out there. And there's probably space to do that yet, in terms of really showing funders how their funding journalism makes a difference for their aims. But if there is totally a lack of funding, and you say, well, it is a public good and it therefore needs to be funded like one, and if you're able to access state funding, do it in a way that as best as possible keeps that influence away from it. So, for example, in New Mexico, they were able to sort of cleverly repurpose workforce development grants as funding for graduate internship schemes. They just got $500,000 approved for that, and that's enabling journalists to stay in the state, working for these organizations, and provide really important capacity for very small, rural, poorly resourced newsrooms. So yeah, it's not without its challenges in adapting it more tricky context, but I think it's pooled funds in particular are really powerful models in addressing the kind of concerns around donor influence by saying it's pooled, it's shared. The funders is maybe there's 20 funders, so there's not one funder which has the relationship, and it shares the risk for funders, and by focusing on supporting the business development of newsrooms, that's further separating a perception of influence in the editorial content itself.
Yes, you were mentioning state funding, and we've seen from this research that we're presenting today, the public broadcasting services are mentioned as well. So the expectations are trust, but still there is not enough trust since the public broadcasters, who have a very, very big role in I mean, they are the democracy pillars in all of our societies, but at the same time, they are perceived as somebody who is working for the government. Let me put that in a very simple way. So Jeton, maybe you can share the experiences, how it is like, what is it like in Kosovo or any other countries, since you worked on the research as well. How that perception maybe can change.
So just to understand you correctly, did you ask about the perception in terms of funding or?
In terms of people and what this research showed, that people don't trust, and you're all mentioning word trust all the time, but people trust media less and less, but public service media even more, because most of them have like in partially or completely are state funded. So that trust is eroded, and at the same time we want to talk and maybe open the debate on how that trust can be regained, for example, for such institutions as public broadcasters are.
And yes, that's very true. The public service media plays a major role in our countries, and unfortunately, the funding mechanism, at least for Kosovo's case, is not very sustainable. It's not very politically free, because since 2012, the public broadcaster in Kosovo is funded directly from the public budget. And in recent years, we have seen delays in terms of funding, even from the public budget, and that has created a lot of tensions, a lot of uncertainties within the public broadcaster, and it has visibly showed that how much the public broadcaster depends on the will of politicians when it comes to budget allocation. And you can imagine what happens when you depend on the will of politicians with regard to the budget. And in Kosovo's case, just to also reemphasize this, the public broadcaster, the trust in public broadcasters is very important, because it serves two communities. It serves the Albanian-speaking community with the RTK1 and the RTK2. It serves the Serbian or the Serbs of Kosovo community, who also should develop a better and higher trust on RTK2, since it is a publicly funded media. So I think the future, and we are in the crossroad of amending the law on the public broadcaster, and I believe it's very important for the decision, for the lawmakers, to really think about different approaches when it comes to financing the public broadcaster, as well as to when it comes to appointing the board of the public broadcaster, who should be very professional, who should be politically independent, who should really have a vision about the future of the public broadcaster, because it's very important to have a public broadcaster that serves all the communities, that serves the public interest, and that engages with the people, especially in terms of providing something that other private media provide less, and that is educational and cultural programs.
True, and we've seen how I was surprised how people are aware about the children program and everything that public broadcasters are, I mean, legally bound to produce and to publish. Okay, we have another question in here. It was for Jeton and Ivan, but maybe I'll give you some time to rest, Jeton. So Ivan, considering that Western Balkan countries in particular face propaganda and disinformation by external actors as well, especially during election campaigns, what should journalists do to prevent these attacks from affecting citizens?
Professionalism, nothing else. We should keep about the standards, about what is the basic of the journalism, to respect the rules, to keep with the standards, and to do good journalism practice. Nothing else can happen in this situation. We can fight with the pressure from the political parties, from propaganda, from disinformation. Only we keep with the professional standards in the journalism.
That's true. Okay, so one more question for you, Ivan, since you are in the operative part of the newsroom and of the whole media that you represent. Is there anything that you feel that the media won't be able to adapt to very fast? We were talking about artificial intelligence, and we've seen the results of that. We've seen about like not having so much trust in the technology and AI. On the other hand, there are algorithms that are, making our jobs pretty hard and challenging. So what do you think we will be least able to adapt to?
Yes, technology is doing very big pressure on our everyday work. I suppose that every one of you remembers when we had social medias introduced publicly. It was not possible for us to think that we can use them as a source or they can help us to make a closer contact with the public. But today it is totally different. We can't imagine working without social medias. We are now on a different level, as you mentioned, with the artificial intelligence. I have made research in our newsroom a few months ago about the use of AI in everyday work, and the results were 100%. Everyone was using some kind of AI, but less than 10% said that they are using AI to produce final product. Most of them were using to summarize results, summarize some information, data information, or for background information when they prepare some story. It is obvious that we will have to work more and more with AI in the future. But if we were doing training for media literacy a few years ago, I think that now we really need to do trainings about the use of AI in the media. Public viewers, they deserve and they need to know what is reality and what is being made by the help of the artificial intelligence using technology. We need to adopt these standards to become part of our everyday work in the newsroom. A lot of us are thinking that AI will took our jobs. We can now see even some medias are doing all of the package using AI, producing with the support of AI. But I really think that nothing can change what a human being can do, how a reporter can make the story on the field, what can you do on the field. I think that this cannot be made with AI. The human touch on the story cannot be made with the help of AI. This is my personal view, and I think that we need to find a way to implement AI professionally, not to be afraid, but to use the benefits from the technology. It can just be useful. We cannot also forget the credibility and the confidence. And as I say, we can gain the confidence just by doing the professional standard and doing good journalism.
And when using technology being thinking about the ethics.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe
especially ethics.
Yes, especially the ethics, because as you said, 100% said the data. Okay, we will not be. I'm talking from the position of a journalist because I'm a journalist. First of all, I think that no artificial intelligence can change our place, but we are supposed to use that technology as a crutch to maybe use it best as we can to help us do our job better and more creatively.
Totally agree with you. Yeah.
Would you agree? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for agreeing with me. Okay, so for some last, to end up this session, I would like to hear the last conclusions from all three of you concerning comparing everything that we've heard from this research, and let's go into the positive mindset. Is there a brighter future, and from which perspective and in which segment? Jeton?
Well, I would like to also end with this optimistic approach as well, in the sense of that what we found out from the research with discussing with the citizens is that citizens really care about good journalism, and they know what is good journalism. So in the sense of we have really discussed different aspects of them with regard to the future, but it appears that people, they would like to see more ethical journalism, less disinformation, less fake news, information that is based on facts and that is relevant. So, and the second thing that they would like to see is more news and information that is more relevant to their daily life. And that means less political noise, less political news, which is unfortunately taking much of the coverage in the media these days. So from the citizen perspective, it's surprising or not to understand that people know what is good journalism and they expect that kind of journalism to be provided to them in the future. On another note, journalists themselves and the media practitioners and the editors, they also would like to see more of the ethics being involved and respected in the daily work. They are not afraid of transparency and accountability because they know that it takes this profession to be transparent and accountable for whatever they report. So the bottom line is that despite the technology advances, we have citizens who depend on journalism, who depend on the work of journalists, and hopefully that work will be done according to the journalism standards.
Thank you, Jeton. Ivan, last thoughts?
I'm really optimistic about the future of the journalism. If I use my experience, I think that we are going on a better and better level year by year, struggling with the technologies, but I think that we are using the best practices. So if we cover everything that we spill now, I will say that it is very important to do professional on the professionals, to keep the professional standards and to do good journalism practices, to fight for our rights as a journalist, and to use the technologies to help us and not lose the fight with the technology. I hope that we will have a brighter future for the journalism, not only in the region, but in the whole world.
Thank you. And Lucas, I don't know if you've seen the chat, but there was a lot of discussion and comments about the philanthropic approach to funding and everything. So is there some kind of an advice for this region and how to expect maybe some individuals who are wealthy, who would like to support media, or what to do, or how to detect them in the society?
Yeah.
How to reach out to them?
So yeah, on that positive note, for me, the conclusion of this research, as someone who's been working in independent local news for over 10 years, is this sense of hope. Like I would have loved to have one of these sort of funds supporting me when I was running a newsroom, not just with the funding, but with the capacity building and the cohorts, and looking at it from that perspective of someone who's been through that change process. I think they are great vehicles. I think they offer a lot of hope because they address the kind of roots of the kind of needs and challenges that we're all facing in many different contexts, and that these arguments, I think, if you read through the research, it's just the arguments for it becoming increasingly really kind of spelt out. They're clear arguments, and they are bringing more funders in. So I think look at the arguments that are being made in the research. And what makes me hopeful about it is that these are both effective vehicles, these journalism funds, for raising the funding and making it independent, addressing the concerns around firewalls, and they're effective processes as well. They're effective approaches by focusing on capacity building and business development, supporting the people who are leading the change and focus on doing journalism that has a public good. My advice to someone who's looking to set up a fund in the region, the best thing you can do is start with a funder, someone who's already gets it and cares about it, because they will be your best advocate to speak to other funders to get into their networks. The process that I've heard is that you build a very small cohort, maybe 3 or 4 funders who come together and say, we're gonna explore how we can build this thing. I think it's really great to have a sort of co-design process between those funders to get that buy-in between them and to build a vehicle that works for them. I think it's really important at the same time as you can draw on this research that's fantastic to do that listening. What's happening in the ecosystem in the country? What are people's needs, and how and what assets are already there to build in both the needs of the community you want to support, as well as the people who are going to be giving to that fund. And my advice is to ultimately launch something as soon as possible to get a proof of concept. That as much as you want to design something, it's the best thing you can do. The best way you can learn is by launching something. So a lot of these funds focus on getting something out there within a year or so of thinking about it, and just addressing that urgent need for support. and also saying we're doing this, and it creates that that you're putting your hand up in the air and say, come to us, come and support our mission. And you see that these funds grow quite a lot when they have launched. So yeah, get a core group, at least one funder, and then get the ball rolling from there. But I feel very hopeful about their potential.
Lucas, Jeton, Ivan, Vesna, I would like to thank you all for participating today, for giving us and sharing with us your knowledge. It was really inspiring from my point of view, and I'm sure with everyone who participated and who watched this this webinar. At the same time, I would like to thank Majda and Tihomir for making space, finding the funding and in such a way creating good studies, the previous one from last year, this one, that are complementing each other, and in such a way giving support to the media here in the region. We have the know-how now, we have the lessons learned, we have a lot of data from the research, so that is something to continue building on. Thank you everyone very much, and read the reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.